Good afternoon, everyone. This is Pastor Jed, and this is the April 26th edition of Apologetics and Prophecy, my personal video blog, where we like to discuss things that have to deal with prophecy and are prophetic in nature. And really, as we are getting into the post-Easter season, really the beginning of summer is coming soon, and a lot of things going on in the world around us. And I don't know if you're like me and you're paying attention to what's going on in the world and in our country, you can't help but see the chaos that's happening, not only in our government, but in all the world. There's a great division between different thoughts and different philosophies and worldviews that are clashing right now. And it's in our country, it's just going crazy. There's stuff that every ungodly thing you can imagine is being promoted in our own government. And, everything from the legalization to marijuana, abortion on demand up to the time of birth, just all kinds of stuff. Us giving up our rights completely, and just, profanity used out in the open like it's no big deal. And we just see these things happening in our world today. And really the disunity in our own government, in our own country, begs us to think, we should be falling apart at the seams right now, right? And really, we're not. Watching the news today, I don't know about you, but I kind of keep an eye on business and things that are going on with the economy, and we're actually doing very well. The nation's GDP numbers were 3.2. It was 0.7 higher than they were expecting. And a lot of analysts were downplaying even that, didn't think we were going to have a slow quarter. And here we are, boom, And the economy is doing really good. And usually when there's this much division and this much intrigue and this much suspicion and corruption in our government, there's no reason for it. And it seems like the prosperity of our nation is completely ignoring that which is happening in our government. And we could pick up those issues maybe at some point, but right now I want to ask the question why? Why is that? Why is this at this point in time when there seems to be a lot more division and disunity and our debt going crazy and just all this real worry? I mean, if you really look at things, you can think, how can this continue to go on? It can't, and no work is getting done. How that's not affecting our economy and the prosperity of the people of the nation. And I am just offering a suggestion. It's a conjecture. It is not something that I can point my finger and say, thus says the Lord. But as we know, as prophecy people, we want to look at things and current events in light of the Bible, in light of Scripture. And there are direct prophecies. And, let's read, I want to read a couple verses out of Isaiah chapter 46 to kind of build on that point, the point that I'm going to make today. And that is, remember the former things of old. I'm in chapter 46, verses 9 and 10 of Isaiah. Remember the former things of old, for I am God, and there is no other. I am God, and there is none like me, declaring the end from the beginning, and from ancient times the things that are not yet done, saying, my counsel shall stand, and I will do my pleasure. So, of course, God is talking about prophecy, and uniquely in the context of this section of Isaiah, he is speaking of the captivity of the nation of Judah at the time, and them going into captivity under the reign of Nebuchadnezzar, and that they would be there for 70 years as Jeremiah would predict later on from this point. But he proceeds to tell them that at the end of those 70 years that he's going to raise somebody up, and he calls him by name Cyrus. It's a miraculous prophecy that God is building up to here in his word through the prophet Isaiah to declare to Israel hundreds of years before it would happen that this person was going to allow you to come back from captivity to rebuild the city of Jerusalem. And uniquely, that did happen. And, historians say from that time period that it was because Daniel showed Cyrus prophecy in Isaiah that Cyrus gave the decree to send the Jews back to their land to build a city, and that has been proven in archaeological history. So, but with that said, God's making a point. I declare things from the beginning. I declare things about the end from the beginning. I can say things that are going to come to pass before they come to pass because God is timeless. He lives in a timeless, he's outside of space and time. So of course he's going to know the end from the beginning. And the Bible maps out Bible prophecy for us. We don't need to question or know why. We understand the things that are going on today and the things that are going to happen because the Bible tells us about them. But there's also standards of things that we can look at. It's kind of like God says that if people do this, this will happen. And we know the number one key to prophecy, the number one key to know that we are in the last days is the nation of Israel and the city of Jerusalem. If we want to know where we are on the time clock of God's time clock, we look at the nation of Israel and we look at the city of Jerusalem. We know the nation of Israel became a nation in 1948. And then, of course, in 1967, they regained control of the city of Jerusalem. So we have this unique perspective to look at when we look at Bible prophecy. But there's something interesting about Israel as a nation in the land and the Jewish people in general, that God gave specific promises to those throughout time from the beginning to the end that would happen when people regarding and relating to the nation of Israel. To really describe the time we're in now, which really makes you sit. I know I've been covering this verse a lot because it's very important, because it really speaks of not only the time we're living into, but the heart and the mind of unredeemed civilization, our culture right now. And that is that it says that verse 25 and 26 in Luke 21, it says, and there will be signs in the sun and in the moon and the stars, and on earth distress of nations. We have that, right? With perplexity. They don't know how to get out of it. Our national debt, there's no way we could ever pay that off. All the countries are in this financial crisis that they try to cover up, and hopefully high GDP numbers, raise taxes. There's no way you can dig yourself out of it. And so there's distress of nations with perplexity. They have no idea how to get out of it. The seas and the waves roaring. They look around and the idea is that the seas and the waves are roaring and they're crashing into the land, and there's really no way you can stop it. It's a freight train that's coming of disaster, and there's no way to fix it, no way out of it. That's exactly where we are as a nation today and in a world when it comes to economics and government. And so those things are predicted right here by Jesus. And of course, men's hearts are failing them from fear and the expectation of those things that are coming on the earth. So we see that's where people's hearts, and that's the way our nation is. And we really see a decrease in Christianity, a decrease in fundamental Christianity, and an increase in secularism in the world today. We have socialists that are running for office right now that want to put us into bondage, want to put us, have a godless world and culture to raise up. And so what is that going to look like? But we ask ourselves, why are we still living in this moment of prosperity right now? Why is the economy doing so good? Why are people being blessed? This nation is being blessed financially. And I can just surmise, conjecture, as we look back at a very important prophecy that many of you already know. But we want to look at this and talk about it for a minute. And that is in Genesis chapter 12. We call it the Abrahamic covenant, which was really the Abraham would be the grandfather of Jacob, who would become Israel, and his sons would become the nation of Israel. And so to Abraham, God said, the Lord had said to Abram in Genesis chapter 12, verse 1, get out from your country, from your family, and from your father's house to a land that I will show you. I will make you a great nation. I will bless you and your name and make your name great, and you shall be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and I will curse him who curses you, and in you all the families of the earth shall be blessed. Now, these things are just conjecture, but that is a promise, and God has already said in his word that to test him in those areas. When he makes a promise, he knows the end from the beginning. It's going to happen, just like he said, his counsel shall stand, we just read. So if that's true, that any nation or people that blesses the nation of Israel or the Jewish people, and specifically the nation of Israel and the city of Jerusalem, God promises to bless them, doesn't he? Regardless of themselves, right? It doesn't matter how disunified the people might be. It doesn't matter how many personal problems they have, but because they have taken the time to bless his people, his nation, he promises to bless them. So could it be that during the last administration, which was very anti-Israel, one thing that I'll point out that they did was that before the last administration came into office, we had promised to deliver Israel F-35 fighters, which they need. They needed. So they've had the F-16s that have been modified, and the problem with it was that the last administration delayed that and continued to delay it and continued to delay it. And it wasn't until the first month of the current administration in office those planes were delivered. And so you can see that and there was a lot of things that we did in that last administration that were anti-Israel. We even messed with their election to try to get Netanyahu out of office. We actually funneled money. The corruption in our last administration funneled money through supposedly through a nonprofit. They were federal funds, tax dollar money, that went into an opposition campaign to try to defeat Netanyahu in office. And of course it failed because it wasn't God's will at that time, and Netanyahu stayed president. But you could see that, and what had happened as far as, and I'm not talking about just the general thing. I'm not talking about natural disasters or terrorist attacks, I'm just talking about financial prosperity, because when the Bible talks about blessings, a lot of times, when you bless with rain, you can grow crops. It's material blessings. So when the last administration came into office, it began the Great Recession, and it was the slowest rebound of a recession since, we never saw 3.2 GDP ever in those 8 years. And so what happens? The first thing that the current administration does is he shows that he's a friend of Israel. He promises to move the embassy to Jerusalem and does it. He provides the military items that Israel has asked for. And then just recently, and then of course we built the embassy. Of course we also were there. We did it on the 70th anniversary of Israel as a nation, which is just completely amazing in 2018. And then of course we also just this year recognized Israel's sovereignty over the Golan Heights. That is huge. That is giving land and recognizing land to Israel that nobody ever has. The whole world, you would think that would have started World War III. Syria, it's been wanting that land for a long time because it's a strategic point. Whoever controls the Golan Heights can easily attack Israel from that vantage point. That is why Israel went in there during the 73 war, I think it was, and took over the 67 or the 73, one of those two wars. They came in there and they took over that property because they were putting snipers up on top of the hills and shooting people down at the Sea of Galilee. That's not going to do much for tourism, is it? So I think, and it's my feeling, and it's just a conjecture, but as long as we have an administration, no matter how crazy and broke our nation is, no matter how we can look at the perplexities of it, we're never going to figure it out. We're never going to get out of it. But as long as we as a nation choose to decide to send our blessings to Israel and her land and her right to the land, to the Jewish people, we're going to see material blessings come our way. I believe that. I believe that's what's really holding this country up and this economy. Now, things could change in a moment, and that's God's sovereign will to do that. But as we look when we look at you can't turn on the news for a minute and just get disheartened at both sides of the aisle, because they're both filled with people that are not Christians. They're not born again. They don't know how to manage things without God. So they try to manage them on their own, and mankind cannot manage itself. It never has. And so we see just it's chaos. I mean, some of the things that are coming out of these people's mouth that are running for. We even have a homosexual Democrat running for office who is married to a man and says that that God created him that way and that he's a Christian. Now, we know as fundamental Christians who take stock into what God said, we know that not to be true. He's lying. He's not a Christian. He's deceiving himself. And that's the kind of world that we're marching off to. But yet, we still see this tremendous GDP growth in our country when nobody expected it. Nobody expects it, but God does. God blesses those who bless Israel. And let's just pray. Pray for the peace of Jerusalem. We know that ultimately peace will not be in Jerusalem until the Prince of Peace comes. But we can pray for the peace of Jerusalem. Jerusalem is a cup of trembling for all nations right now. The nations don't know what to do about the Jewish people. And there's, every administration, including the one now, is trying to create a peace plan for the Middle East, and it'll never work. There's not going to be real peace. But we can pray for the peace of Jerusalem. We can pray for the salvation of the people of the Jews and the Palestinians, because we know that when Christ comes into a heart, things change. And so it's important for us to do that. And it's important for us to keep our eyes on Israel and Jerusalem, because really that's the key to everything that's going on in the world. Now, we'll talk about some more stuff in the coming weeks about things we see on the horizon, because usually when there's a calm like it is right now, actually, you might think there's a calm because you don't hear a lot about what's going on over there in the Middle East, but there's actually powers that are shaping and molding and things that are happening there that are setting up the stage for the final, for something to happen. And so we're going to look at the scriptures over the next few weeks and look at some news items, see how they fit together. Maybe take it a little bit, a verse a week or a couple verses a week, and kind of go through some things, mapping out the timeline of what could happen at any moment in prophecy. So hope that encourages you to see that as we have an administration right now, it's not going to be lasting forever. For the moment, we have a nice window where God has decided to give blessings economically. Let's be wise with those things, but realize that it probably won't last forever. And when we decide to turn our backs on Israel, God's going to turn his back on us completely, if he hasn't already, for many of the sins of our nation. So let's just continue to pray for Israel, praying that you all have a good week. I know it's post Easter. Some of us are a little exhausted maybe from all the setup, but our church has a lot of stuff coming up this summer. We're looking for some exciting things to do to continue to get the word of God out and get the gospel out, because it's important. We should be redeeming the time, making every opportunity to share the gospel and the good news of Jesus Christ. So God bless you all, and I'll see you next week, okay? Bye-bye.